Your tooth is rotting. It is 7000 BCE. There is no dentist, no pharmacy, and nowhere to go. So what did they actually do? And why is the answer stranger and more sophisticated than anything you'd expect? At Mergher, in the foothills of what is now Balochistan, archaeologists recovered skeletal remains dated to somewhere between 7000 and 5000 BCE. The molars had holes in them, not from decay. The holes were too precise, too consistent, too deliberately placed. Microscopic analysis confirmed it. Concentric grooves running in tight circles, the signature of a rotating drill. The tool was a bow drill, the same instrument early humans used to make fire. Someone had taken a flint tip, fitted it to a spindle, and pressed it against a living tooth until the decayed material was gone. That detail deserves a second. The same technology used to start a fire was being used to hollow out a molar. And it wasn't a one-time experiment. The remains at Mergher show multiple treated teeth within the same individuals. These people came back. Whatever was happening at that site, whoever was doing the drilling, it was recognized, repeated, and trusted enough that a person would submit to it more than once. That is not desperation producing a single frantic act. That is something closer to a practice. Now pause on what that procedure actually felt like. There was no numbing agent, no chair, no suction, no assistant telling you to rinse. Someone held a spinning flint against your molar and kept going until the job was done. The only reason a person tolerates that is because the alternative, the infection, the abscess, the relentless pressure of a rotting tooth was worse. You already know that calculation. It's the same one you're running at 3 a.m. when you're pressing your tongue against a throbbing tooth and seriously considering whether the emergency dental line is worth the call. The desperation is identical, only the tools changed. Then comes a filling. In a karstic cave in southern Slovenia, researchers identified what is now considered the oldest known filling material in the archaeological record. The Lancia jaw, a 6,500-year-old human mandible, contains a tooth sealed with beeswax. The wax had been packed into the cavity, hardened, and preserved well enough that modern analysis could confirm it was applied around the time of the individual's death, not afterward. Beeswax is pliable, slightly antimicrobial, and capable of forming a physical seal over exposed tissue. Whoever applied it understood, on some level, that the problem wasn't just the decay, it was what the decay left behind. An open wound in the mouth, something that needed to be covered. For a long time, finds like this were treated as isolated curiosities. A drilled tooth here, a wax filling there, anomalies rather than evidence of anything systematic. The emerging picture is different. Across multiple Neolithic sites, across thousands of years, the same pattern keeps appearing. Physical intervention, repeated technique, materials chosen for their properties. That is not coincidence. That is a recognizable practice spreading and persisting because it worked well enough to be worth the pain of doing it. But drilling and filling solved the structural problem. They addressed the hole, the decay, the mechanical failure of the tooth. What they did not solve was the pain itself, the hours before the procedure, the days after it, the dull, constant ache that no flint tip could reach. That problem required a completely different kind of thinking, and the solution ancient humans found for it is, if anything, even more surprising than the drill. The launched jaw gets me every time. Beeswax, packed into a cavity 6,500 years ago, because leaving it open was not an option. Would you have submitted to the bow drill or taken your chances with the infection? Drop your answer in the comments below. Now, here's where it gets stranger, because drilling and filling only solved half the problem. But the drilling only solved half the problem. The hole was gone. The decay had been removed. But the pain, the hours before anyone touched the tooth, the raw days after the flint pulled away, that required a completely different solution. And this is where the evidence stops being impressive and starts being genuinely strange. Researchers analyzing dental calculus. Hardened plaque, essentially from Neanderthal remains, found something that shouldn't be there. Traces of yarrow and other bitter, non-nutritive plants. Not food. Nothing you'd eat by accident. Yarrow tastes terrible. It has no caloric value. The only reason it ends up lodged in a Neanderthal's teeth is because someone was deliberately chewing it for its properties. And yarrow has been documented across cultures as a pain-dulling, anti-inflammatory plant for thousands of years. This is not Homo sapiens. This predates our species using these remedies. The impulse to reach for something from the ground when a tooth is screaming, that is older than us. Let that sit for a second. We are not talking about modern humans discovering herbal medicine. We are talking about a different species, one that went extinct roughly 40,000 years ago, already working out which plants did something useful for pain. The toolkit didn't start with us, we inherited it. By the time you reach ancient Egypt, the approach had become considerably more deliberate. The Ebers Papyrus, dated to around 1550 BCE, contains specific compound remedies for tooth pain, mixtures of honey, crushed minerals, and plant-based ingredients applied directly to the affected area. Honey was not a random choice. It carries documented antibacterial properties. Egyptian practitioners appear to have understood, empirically, that certain materials reduced inflammation and slowed infection, not because they had a germ theory of disease, but because they had watched enough cases to know what worked. Then there is birch bark tar. Archaeological evidence from multiple European Neolithic sites shows birch bark tar being used as a rudimentary sealant, packed into cavities, applied to damaged teeth. On its own, that's notable. But birch bark contains salicylate compounds. Salicylates are the chemical family that aspirin belongs to. Whoever was pressing birch tar into a cracked molar 9,000 years ago was inadvertently delivering a chemical relative of the painkiller you'd reach for today. They didn't know why it worked. They knew that it did. That distinction is everything. Empirical knowledge, observation without explanation, is still knowledge. It still saves you from the abscess. The conventional image of prehistoric pain management is passive. People endured. They had no choice. The evidence says something completely different. Across thousands of years, across multiple continents, across at least 2 distinct human species, the response to dental pain was consistent. Find something, apply something. Do not simply sit with it. Yarrow, from a Neanderthal site in Europe. Compound resins from Egyptian papyri. Birch tar from Neolithic caves. Beeswax packed into the launch jaw. These are not isolated accidents. They are the same instinct, expressed again and again in whatever materials were locally available. Which brings you back to the person at Mehrgar in 7000 BCE. They had a rotting tooth. Someone drilled it with a bow drill. They packed it with whatever resin or plant material was at hand. They chewed something bitter from the forest floor to dull the edge of the pain, and they kept going. The procedure was brutal, the pharmacology was improvised, but the underlying logic was identical to what you're doing at 2 in the morning, pressing your tongue against a throbbing molar, opening a browser, typing something into a search bar. The desperation is the same. The ingenuity is the same. The refusal to just endure it, that is the oldest thing about us. If you enjoyed learning about humanity's past, make sure to subscribe to Sir Sticks. There are still thousands of fascinating stories from our ancestors waiting to be uncovered. Be sure to let me know in the comment section what part of the ancient world you would like to explore next.